Hi, this is Paul Del Vecchio. Welcome to Color Grading Canon 7D Footage, Part 2, the teal-orange look for color contrast. We'll be dealing with footage from my upcoming web series, Aftermath. So I'm actually now going to get rid of some of these nodes at the end here because that's where the final look kind of comes in. Keep in mind I got rid of the contrast curve. So basically all this stuff is sort of getting the image to a place where I can now add my look. And in this case, this node was basically my look. I just pushed it more toward yellow, red. But let's say I wanted to do a different look and give it more of a teal or blue shadows and orange look. So I'll add my layer here. There's multiple ways to do this. There's adding the green and yellow highlights and a teal into the midtones and shadows. And for that, you would want to do that separately. So you would push blue into the midtones. And if it doesn't show up here, hold Shift and hit H, and the highlight will come up and you'll be able to see it. Here is the blue added to the midtones, and I'm just going to do this quickly. And then here I'm going to jump into log actually and mess with the high range and just kind of bring this down to 4.4, 0.5 or so, maybe around there, and then push that yellow green into the highlights, and you can kind of see that there. And then here I will sample it and bring the skin tones across. I like to let all the warm colors kind of pop through. So what I do is just barely get a little bit of the green in there and just barely get a little bit of that purple in there. And you have to be careful, especially when you're outdoors. Don't bring in too much green is the point. I'm going to move that around, and you can kind of clean the black and white here. Basically, you're cleaning the opacity. Here you'll see, if I zoom in, you'll see the white sort of is contaminated, so you can kind of clean that up just to get a nicer key sample. Clean the blacks a little bit. The most important setting here is the blur radius, because that kind of gives you a smooth gradation between the opaque and transparent parts of the image. I usually think around a 35 is a good place to start, but I know for this I might have to pump it up to like 40 or so, probably even more than that. You can kind of see there's sort of like this harshness going on where the blues are very pronounced and so are the skin tones. So what you want to do actually is come into the key here and drop each of these nodes down to about 0.8 for the opacity level. So it kind of helps it blend with the original more, and the skin tones don't come across as strong, and the blues don't come across as strong. Now you can see that here, it kind of just blends a little bit better. The colors are not popping enough yet because we don't actually have a proper contrast curve in there. Now, one thing you could do after this look that you add your contrast curve and your colors will start to pop. You'll see the blues start to pop a little bit more. And actually, what I'm noticing is the skin might be a little bit too saturated. Either you can go back to your skin tone node and desaturate it, or you can drop down, this is probably a better way to do it, is drop down your opacity of the node so that the skin tones don't really come across so much. So that's cool. I like that. And now I can add my contrast curve. And if you feel that after the contrast curve, the colors aren't coming across as much as you want, like the blues are not coming across, you can either come in here and add a little bit more blue, which is nice. Now just reset this and make sure that the blues are not overpowering anything. And they look like they might be just a little bit here. So I'm just going to push that back a little bit. You want to make sure that the intensity of each color is about equal so that it doesn't really look forced and fake. So even out the intensities of the colors so that you're not coming through with a blue that's just way too powerful like that. I think that's about right. So I'm just going to jump back out to my contrast curve here and add some contrast. Now you'll start to see that the colors saturate and they start to pop. So the blues actually pop quite a bit. And again, I'm going to do these points so that it creates just smoother transitions. You can see that the colors, especially like the blues here, they start to pop a little bit more, especially in a shirt. If I turn off this node, you can kind of see that the blues do pop a little bit more. If that's not coming across enough, then what you can do is add a node before it. So a node before the contrast, just add a little bit more saturation. And if you start to see that the blue is not enough, again, you'll have to jump back to the blue and add more. It's basically a push-pull kind of thing, so you really have to play around with it and make sure that you're getting the look that you want. around there, I'm kind of liking the way that looks. Jumping back out to my saturation node, I can play around with this and kind of get it where I want. Just remember that when you add a contrast curve and all of these are linked, that it's going to saturate the colors more. So you want to kind of hold back a little bit so that when you do add the contrast back in, the colors will pop and you're not oversaturating it. One of the tricks too, you can do this before and you'll start to see that it affects the saturation. But another thing you can do, now that the contrast curve is in there and you have those pumped up colors, you can add another node after that and add more saturation, and that'll kind of punch up those already punched up colors. But it's important to do this look before your contrast. Otherwise, when you add the contrast curve before that, you're not actually going to punch up those blues and the shadows and everything because the contrast is done before the actual look. So you want to add the look and then add the contrast after that so that all the colors get that pumped up, contrasted kind of look. And then you can fine tune from there. So I'll just go a little bit more with the blue. I kind of like the way this is looking, but it's a little too saturated for my taste. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of desaturate this node a little bit. I think around there is okay. I might actually come back to the skin tones and bring that up a little bit because I think the blue is overpowering it now. All right. So about there. Now I think that's a good look, but I think the blues are kind of creeping in a little too much. So what I'm going to do is just take this and move the gain down. And I'm actually going to zoom in so I can actually see what is going on here. Now bring this down. And overall kind of look at the image and adjust how much of that blue is going to creep in. Yeah, I'm liking that because I think everything kind of blends nicely there and it's not overpowering in any way. I'm just going to kind of jump back here to kind of reset my eyes a little bit because I've been looking at this, so my eyes might be playing tricks on me. So I'm just going to actually just jump around and look at some of the other images here that are not graded and kind of reset my eye. So when I jump back here and I look at it, now the blue is a little bit aggressive, so that's why you do that. And you just kind of come in here and drop this down a little bit, and I think that's about right. That's cool. Let's look at it before and after. So that's straight out of the camera, and that's with our grade, so there's a nice color contrast separation there. Check my scopes. I'm liking the way this is looking overall. So I'll just put my finishing touches on it, which is basically adding my grain. So let's add that film convert back in. Another trick too is that if your nodes start like falling off and like the start here, you know, they start getting off screen, you just center it so that you see all your nodes and then take the slider and just move it and then move it back and it'll reset these points. It's a little organizational thing. So let me jump back in here and just turn these down. I might play with this just to see how nice that's looking. So I might just let this film color do a little bit of affecting, 25% or so. I'm going to keep my grain up to 100. I bought Film Convert for the grain because it has the best looking grain I've seen of any plugin, and I like the controls that you have over it. So this adds texture and it's a little dirty. I might even, if I really want, I could like jack the grain up to like 120, and that's a lot of grain, but I think it actually kind of helps with the subject matter, and I like that. I like the way that looks. So I have this now warm and cool color contrast going on, and I'm liking the way it's looking. That is, in a nutshell, how I process 7D footage. The key takeaways being this reverse S-curve, because I feel like coming out of the camera, it has a bit more contrast, even on the flat profiles that they have, and not using the standard, but using the other custom ones where you pump down the contrast and saturation. And you can see it actually, for 8-bit footage, it actually grades pretty well. You just kind of have to be careful and make sure, especially when you're keying colors like skin tones and stuff, it's a little bit harder. But you just want to make sure that you're a little bit more careful than typical footage that might be 10-bit or 12-bit or RAW. Treat it right. shoot it right, get as close to possible in camera as you can, and you should be all set. You don't have as much freedom, but you kind of do have a lot of freedom. I mean, if you just kind of look at the before and after, you can get a really nice look out of it. So 8-bit footage, yeah, it is what it is, but you can push it and you'll be surprised as long as you are careful and you shoot it properly. Again, this is Paul Del Vecchio. Hit me up through Twitter at PaulDV or on Instagram at PDelV or Facebook.com/PaulDV. If you like this video, subscribe. More coming soon. Thanks again, Paul Del Vecchio, Triple E Productions. I'll talk to you guys later.